It feels like it has become a tradition now for me to release a massive Madoka Magica video every few months, and to be honest, the views and engagement are certainly a motivating factor for me to keep doing so. Thank you for all of your support on last year's trailer analysis and my recent theory video. Let's keep up the hype for Walpurgisnacht Rising this year too. I'm gonna do the YouTuber thing where I ask you to like and subscribe. I just hit 200 subs at the beginning of this year, and I'm very pleased with that. Now, I'm very behind on a news update, but there is a reason for that. 6 months ago, a new teaser dropped for the film, and while I almost put out a video for it at the time, I held off because I had a sneaking suspicion that it was only the first of at least two trailers. And, lo and behold, 2 weeks ago, as of penning this script, a second trailer dropped with some clarifications to what would have been my original points for the first trailer. You've been around my channel long enough now to know the drill. We're going to dedicate the next few minutes to solely recapping the trailers and then discuss it in excruciating depth. This trailer opens with a brief shot of the city in a sunset backdrop, similar to shots that we've seen before. We switch to Homura laying on her back in a pool of red liquid, which I'm going to go against the grain and say isn't blood. The same city shot is repeated, but this time at night, and for what I think is the first time since Rebellion's ending, we see the half moon in the background, but one half is actually visible until it begins to fade out. Some scenes begin to flash in rapid succession, starting with the shot of Mami eating cake similar to ones we've seen before, Kyoko aggressively kicking down a door and crashing through what appears to be a labyrinth barrier, Sayaka's gloved hand running over an image that displays her witch form Octavia. We then see Sayaka's bandages flying off of her face as her once covered eye takes the form of Octavia's, implying an imminent transformation. Kyoko is seen striking downwards with the back end of her spear set against a blue backdrop that evokes labyrinth imagery. The next shot is massive. Madoka is in the middle of some kind of temple structure surrounded by spider-like witch minions that are named Bona. And atop them is the mystery green-haired character. Based on the surroundings and minions and description of this specific girl, I believe we can confirm that this is the human form of the witch named Paola. We will further discuss stuff like this after the breakdown. We get yet another shot of Mami in the cake shop area, implying its significance to the story. And then we see Madoka surrounded by a multitude of rotary phones, all of them ringing and causing Madoka to look shocked or overwhelmed. Someone hangs up one of the phones, but unfortunately I can't immediately pick exactly who this is, but it could simply just be Madoka herself. We get an extended look of the temple-like area from before and see that it is actually much larger than we realized. My guess is that this will be a central setting for the film. We then see that interior structure which has the glass figure, a massive array of books, and Sayaka exploring it. For the first time in these trailers, we finally catch a glimpse of Walpurgisnacht, but only for a few frames as she is shrouded by clouds. We then see Paola's magical girl form in her actual transformed state, and then, validating one of my theories, the other mystery girl with orange hair appears in her magical girl form. Due to the needles and pincushion aesthetic of her attire, I feel very confident in saying that I called it, and that the human form of Quitterie, the Needle Witch, is indeed in this movie. There's another shot of Sayaka in the glass library, but this time everything is darkened except for Sayaka herself, upon whom a spotlight is focused, seemingly confirming a link between this and the prior Sayaka/Octavia scenes. See a different angle of Madoka in the temple pond, where she is looking up where we last saw Paola's magical girl while water falls down around her. Yet another shot of the glass library is shown, but this time Kyubey is in it. And seemingly linked to this is a shot of Homuras standing in front of the statue as its face becomes distorted. And the background here is dark, implying it has a link to the last Sayaka scene. Some vague kind of eruption of energy is seen, and we end on a shot of Mommy once again in that cake shop area eating some kind of dessert. This trailer begins almost like how the last one ended, but this time it is Madoka who is eating something sweet, being a lollipop. Before we see her actually put it in her mouth, it hard cuts to a somewhat annoyed looking Kyoko, who is also eating a dessert, which appears to be some kind of chocolate and sprinkles coated pocky stick. There's a shot of a strawberry shortcake and some other type of cake alongside it, which is arranged on a silver plate. We see an exterior shot of Mitakihara Middle School where half of it is under construction, confirming that at least some of the construction site backdrop that we've seen in prior trailers has likely been the school itself. We cut to inside the school where we see Madoka, Hitomi, Sayaka, Kyoko, and two male students behind them, one who is reading and one who is asleep on their desk. Neither of these students appear to be Nakazawa or Kyosuke. Sayaka is about to leave class, and presumably Madoka is too, given they both have bags over their shoulders, but once Madoka later waves Sayaka off, it's clear that she's not leaving with Sayaka. Kyoko appears confused by this, whereas Madoka and Hitomi have pleased expressions. Sayaka in this shot has a soul gem ring visible on her hand. Mami and Kyoko are seen walking together either to or from the school, with Kyoko expressing confusion around Sayaka's attitude. We will further discuss the narration after the trailer breakdown. We see some ambiguous establishing shots, such as ripples in water, a stained glass roof with a black bird and a white bird flying past, and someone who I assume to be Kyoko opening a can of drink. We see Mami followed by Nagisa in their magical girl outfits at night, landing on a bridge of some kind, and we can see more subtle changes in Mami's outfit, being that her leggings are very different from the usual ones. They don't appear to be in a rush, but Mami does seem confused or at the very least interested in something as they are walking towards it. We see a very distressed looking Sayaka in her magical girl attire in some kind of club that is bathed in purple light. We then move on to a different shot of Kyoko, one I think is a slightly altered angle of one we've seen before, and here we see more subtle changes to her magical girl outfit too. She now has short puffy sleeves that actually cover her shoulders. We see Madoka in some kind of interior, which I'm going to assume is her house. Then see a very ambiguous set piece that I can't quite discern, but the red liquid is reminiscent of the pool Homura was laying in the prior trailer, so I believe those two are linked. We get an incredibly curious shot of Madoka falling backwards. The background tells us that she's outside, but when we cut to the next scene, she's suddenly in her house being caught mid-fall by Homura. We can tell that this is Madoka's house based on the booster chair in the background, which would be for her little brother. This scene is also obviously linked to the one of Homura and Madoka dancing together from the trailer last year. We return to the club setting with a head-on shot of Sayaka staring down at a glass, into which several cubes of black ice are dropped, most likely by Homura, who is narrating this portion of the trailer. An exterior shot shows Sayaka and Kyoko speaking to each other in an alleyway, perhaps reminiscent of the alleyway they fought in from the original series, and here we can see that Sayaka also has a bandage wrapped around her left leg. We cut to a wide shot of Mami and Kyoko facing each other. Nagisa is behind Kyoko, and there's a plane overhead and a character in the distance who I can't accurately identify. My best guess is that this must be Sayaka based on the short hair, but to be honest, I am not 100% sure. We get an extended shot of the dessert platter from earlier showing 4 distinct desserts. There is a noticeable theme of teddy bear motifs around these desserts, which may be important to take note of. We see Nagisa petting a cat on a staircase and Mami on that same staircase looking up at something. We see Nagisa, Mami, Kyoko, and Sayaka together in what must be that same club setting from earlier. Nagisa is playing on one of the dance poles, Sayaka is in the back sitting by herself, Mami appears to be reading something, and Kyoko looks to be on her mobile phone. We get a shot of Kyoko in the cafe-like area. She's wiping her face, as evident by the red residue on her knuckles and nail, most likely being the strawberry topping from one of the earlier cakes. But then she looks off to her side, looking either confused or worried about something. We see Sayaka in school outside of her classroom, meaning that this must be linked to the first shot of her in the school. She looks to her left just down the hall, and presumably sees Homura based on the following shot. Most curiously, we see Mommy wearing teddy bear ears and paw-like gloves while drinking from a teddy bear themed cup, linking this once again back to that cafe. We see Nagisa looking off at something. Based on her expression, something bad seems to have happened. In front of her, we see Mommy, and although it's hard to see without slowing down the footage, Kyoko appears to be right next to Mommy, laying face down on the ground. We get a shot of Madoka walking on her own through the temple area we saw in the last trailer, a brief head-on shot of Sayaka in her magical girl outfit falling from the sky. We then see Homura in some outdoor set piece, which I believe is just outside Madoka's home, but I'm not 100% sure of that. Followed by some disconnected shots, first of Paola, who is in her schoolgirl uniform, and then a shot of Quitterie in her magical girl outfit. We then see more shots of them, first Paola, and once again Quitterie, both of them transforming into magical girls. Okay, so a lot has happened in these trailers to say the least. First, let's quickly address the elephant in the room, being the auditory parts. The July 2025 trailer is set to the tune of Nightmare Ballet from Madoka Rebellion, while Homura narrates talking about how a certain phenomena that is occurring does not yet have a name, but describes it as a collection of grief and a joining of witches, naming it Walpurgisnacht. Now, it's been a while, so I could be wrong, but I believe that this is the first mention of Walpurgisnacht's name in these trailers, and what Homer speaks about here finally confirms in the series itself that Walpurgisnacht is in fact a collection of witches, something as I used for speculation in my theory video about who Walpurgisnacht is, but up until now had no solid spoken confirmation within the shows or movies. Homuras stating that the phenomena has no name yet also gives us the likely meaning behind the film's title. Rising is probably in reference to exactly this, the naming of the phenomena known as Walpurgisnacht. If so, it feels oddly fitting that the implication is Homura named it as such, a sort of closed-loop logic where Homura named it after the name she had heard, but the name she heard was always chosen by her. Nightmare Ballet is a curious pick for the OST for this trailer. The last time I did a trailer breakdown, I actually called out this song as important towards Madoka and Homura's shared motif of dance. While dancing as a theme or action isn't really seen anywhere in these trailers, the OST reinforces this theme. Nightmare Ballet played at the opening of Rebellion with the group fighting Hitomi's nightmare, which ended up being a metaphor and foreshadowing for Homura's labyrinth. Maybe something similar is happening in this movie, where someone's nightmare or subconscious is causing something to happen in the real world. The January 1st trailer is much more interesting to me because it introduces an aspect I would never have imagined getting so much focus. I've been firm in my belief that Sayaka will have a very large role in this film, and this trailer does seem to confirm it, but what it also does is imply a clear difference between human and magical girl Sayaka, and truly seems to try and isolate her. Now, don't get me wrong, Isolation and Sayaka is a pairing as old as Kirk and Spock. It truly is inseparable. But what I mean is I am personally noticing an even greater push forwards towards this theme overall, starting with that narration from Kyoko. In this trailer, Kyoko states that she's confused by Sayaka spending time with people who aren't magical girls. First, we note Kyoko can only be talking about Hitomi and Madoka, who are Sayaka's only non-magical girl friends. Kyoko goes to this same school with them, but seems to not understand that they are Sayaka's friends, which is a detail I find odd, considering Kyoko is friends with Mami in this universe, so all of them go to the same school. So why doesn't she understand that Sayaka is hanging out with her friends, regardless of if they're magical girls or not? Mami narrates next, pointing out how it seems to bother Kyoko that Sayaka does this. On one hand, this is obviously just a comment about Kyoko being bothered by Sayaka not taking her role as a magical girl seriously. However, I also can't ignore the fact that this likely will link to Kyoko and Sayaka's budding romance that had some screen time in Rebellion, and perhaps it is a jealousy that's clouding Kyoko's assessment of Sayaka's behavior. It's hard to be sure just yet, but this will be a detail to keep an eye on for when the movie releases. The narration from here on out depicts a talk between Sayaka and Homura where the former seems to sense a disturbance and the latter confirms it. My last trailer breakdown put forth the idea that Sayaka is being molded into a weapon to kill Walpurgisnacht in place of Madoka, and it's being done so by Homura. Looking at the imagery of this trailer, specifically it appears I was correct in calling out that Sayaka will have Octavia reawakened by an outside force. That force is likely Homura, but the reasoning may not even be entirely related to Walpurgisnacht. Later in the trailer, Homura says something curious. She is confused by the appearance of magical girls she has never seen before. And to be honest, I feel like this makes sense. Nagisa existing in the world of Rebellion, which is the one that Madoka made, worked because while Madoka didn't know Nagisa personally, she knew about Charlotte and she knew that that witch had a connection to Mami. So Nagisa's rebirth and connection to Mami was a result of Madoka's memories of her. But for two new characters, at least from Homura's perspective, to show up out of nowhere, it implies that there's something she has no control over. And for a control freak like our girl Homura, that is a no-go. Importantly, this line and logic confirms who these characters are, at least in my opinion. If they are magical girls of witches Homura has never seen or has had so few interactions with that it wouldn't even register for her who they are, then it's impossible for them to be characters who were previously important. That means no Gertrude, no Patricia, no H and Ellie, etc. No witches from the main series who we know Homura and the rest of the Holy Quintet have fought over and over. I'm jumping in here unscripted to add on this tiny detail. You may argue that Nagisa could disprove this. However, in Rebellion, we see that nobody is actually confused by Nagisa, and this makes sense when you consider that everybody has had some contact with Nagisa that we saw in the main series. The only confusion comes about of Homura, who's confused why Nagisa is there, but she knows who this character is. This is not the case for the two new magical girls. My initial instinct was to call out the possibility of Madoka Magica Portable being the source of at least one of the two new characters, and I called out the girl with green hair as being the Needle Witch Quitterie, while most assumed Gertrude. I was almost 100% correct in assuming this, as Quitterie's magical girl does appear to be in this movie, but instead she's the girl with orange hair. The green-haired girl is most certainly Paola, a one-off witch from the Madoka Magica drama CDs. The trailer implies Homura sees these two as threats, and I honestly believe we can determine why this is the case, but for that, let's actually move on to the speculation part of the video. Immediately, most casual fans won't even know who these two witches are, and that's absolutely fair. Their source material, Madoka Magica Portable, and the drama CD series are both Japan language exclusives that have never received official translations. Any translated information of these two products are from fans. Madoka Portable is probably a little more recognizable to some fans as it is the source of popular screenshots like the Hitomi and Homura hug, but overall these are relatively obscure parts of the series, especially for Western fans like myself. Admittedly, I had not even listened to any of the drama CDs until very recently. So with that made clear, what's the point of introducing some obscure characters when speculation was already rampant that we would in fact see more than just the Holy Quintet and Nagisa? Personally, I was expecting to at least see representation from Scene Zero and Mabayu be referenced, as that story is quite literally tied to Walpurgisnacht, and I know at least one friend of mine who is hoping to see Magia Records' Iroha or Yachio show up. While they all still could have cameo appearances, I think we need to look at what these individual parts of the franchise represent as a whole to determine why they're even being included here. To cover my ass, I will first just add in the disclaimer that it is obviously not 100% confirmed that these characters are Quitterie and Paola, but I think it is highly unlikely that they are anyone else. Firstly, this isn't even the first time that we've seen these two characters. I would have included this in my last trailer breakdown, but to be honest, I completely forgot. Now, on screen are two versions of these characters from the concept movie trailer. As you can see, the girl on the right has a hairstyle like Paola's, and the girl on the left have a similar needle/pincushion aesthetic to Quitterie. These characters were always meant for this film. Now with that out of the way, let's first discuss Paola's origins, as they are probably the most scarce to piece together. Paola is a witch who debuted in the fourth Madoka Magica drama CD titled Summer Magical Girl Training Camp, which is, from my understanding, set in a world that is not connected to the main series. It appears to be a world where all the magical girls cooperate to fight witches, something Kyubey remarks as being uncommon. It takes place during a summer vacation and eventually has the girls encounter the aforementioned witch, which is a small creature riding a minion whose body is an inflatable rubber pool floaty designed for her to move around her water-based labyrinth. It also appears to resemble a spider. The girls beat it by working together, something noted by Kyubey as being an efficient way to conserve energy and collect grief seeds, but detrimental to his plans of harvesting the girls. Later, a scene during a shower takes place where Homer's drenched hair earns her comparisons to Sadako from The Ring, and Madoka is teased about whether or not she has, quote, someone special in her life, a question which Homer takes interest in, and Madoka's answer to this is something to the effect of, one day it might be nice to settle down. So Paola doesn't have a huge history of appearances to pull from. She does have occasional appearances as an enemy in Magia Record, but nothing concrete story-wise. Instead of looking at Paola, let's have a look at this story as a whole. Drama CD4, which I'll shorten to SMGTC, sets itself as distinct from canon Madoka Magica by calling out the apparent absurdity of the Holy Quintet actually working together. And this is an accurate assumption from Kyubey to point out as weird. In the original series, it was actually very uncommon for the group to actually work together, well, as a group. And in fact, it always seemed like somebody is lost along the way when reaching Walpurgisnacht. This actually mirrors something that we see in Rebellion, where instead of Kyubey sensing the weird nature of the team, it's Homura. The quintet is working together in Rebellion during the start of the film, but it doesn't take long for Homura to start to question the status quo of the world, and to determine that something is off. Of course, in SMGTC, Kyubey's commentary is a meta joke, while Homura's investigation is crucial to the plot of her reawakening inside of her labyrinth, but both place an emphasis on the idea that the Holy Quintet working together isn't normal. A detail I'd like to bring up now is the comparison between Homura and Sadako made in this story. In the CD, it is simply a joke, but I feel like it is actually an apt comparison. Sadako Yamamura is a vengeful spirit known in Japanese folklore as an onryo, a spirit believed to be able to harm the living and has a goal to right the wrongs committed upon it when it was alive. Homura technically is not dead, but magical girl bodies are described as husks without their souls, simply more akin to piloted suits that give the appearance of a living being while the soul and consciousness is inside of the soul gem. In this way, Homura is indeed a bit like Sadako. She has a plan of vengeance centered around Walpurgisnacht and the Incubators, which is based on them taking Madoka, her one friend, from her before she became a magical girl. The specific inclusion of content from the fourth drama CD is even more interesting to me. Not only are the drama CDs obscure, but of them, the fourth is arguably the most obscure. You'll have possibly heard about the drama CDs even as a casual fan, because one piece of trivia comes from the first of the CDs, being that Madoka's very first wish was to save a cat named Amy. Yet, it is a witch from the last of the CDs that appears to be in this movie. It could simply be because the fourth CD had a witch, but it's not as if they were locked into just using a witch. The CD Easter egg could have been anything, like Amy herself. And yet, they seem to have gone out of their way to pick something deliberately obscure. Before we go any further, let's now pivot to the second new magical girl, who appears very likely to be the human form of Quitterie, a witch from Madoka Magica Portable, a game released for the PSP in 2012 shortly after the original anime's airing. As an aside, if this is indeed the magical girl for Quitterie, I'm instantly in love. I absolutely adore her, her design is incredible, and as a fan of Madoka Portable, it's great to finally see this happen. Portable is a fascinating game to look at in terms of content being adapted, as it is about alternate routes unseen in the anime specific to different characters, such as an ending where Mami outlives her friends, the backstory of Kyoko and Mami, and even an ending dedicated to making Sayaka's life even more miserable. The other half of the game's core loop is its Mysterious Witch Barrier mode, a roguelike dungeon crawler meant for resource gathering and enemy boss fights. It's in this mode where several original witches make their debuts. Portable has always been quietly relevant to the series, and the best example of this is seen in Rebellion. Homura transforms into a witch named Homalili who actually debuted within Portable. As you've guessed by now, Quitterie is one of these Portable original witches. Described in her profile as the Needle Witch, Quitterie is unique among witches as she believes that even in her transformed state, she is fighting to save the universe. There's a small caveat to this, but let's just pin that for a moment. On screen right now is Quitterie's true form, and on screen right now is her disguised form. For some reason, Quitterie's disguise bears the face of an incubator. I bring this up because of a scene from the last main trailer where it showed a close-up shot of the magical girl that we're talking about, and on her shoulder was Cube. We don't know a lot about what their relationship will be in this film, but if I were to hazard a guess, then Quitterie's goal of saving the universe doesn't read as a noble self-sacrifice, but rather something egged on by Cube. Quitterie's witch form is described as the remains of a magical girl who gave up everything to save the universe. If that doesn't read like what Cube wants, which is these girls to be a power source to preserve universal entropy, then I really don't know what does. With near explicit confirmation of Quitterie's magical girl being in this film, I'm also going to make a sound guess that the witch forms for Mami Tomoe and Kyoko Sakura will also be present in this film at some point. Given how much Mami shows up in these trailers, it feels like she will have a sizable role in the film, but what that exactly entails is something I'm not fully sure about. We can see that Sayaka looks to be having Octavia forced out of her or reawakened in some way, presumably by Homura's actions. So I'm going to theorize that the same will happen for Mami and Kyoko, and that their witch forms Candeloro and Ophelia will finally make an on-screen debut in a way similar to what is happening to Sayaka and Octavia. So why are we pulling from Portable and the drama CDs? My guess is that the fourth movie has, ever since early production from what I believe was 2013, always been made as an adaptation of Madoka Portable. Breaking it down, Portable's main story is an extended version of Homura's goals, abandoning timelines in search of the perfect outcome. In Portable, that is something that the player can actually achieve. It is Homura's main route and the best possible ending of the game. Everyone outlives Walpurgisnacht without Madoka becoming the law of cycles, and we end up in a world with an outcome that truly makes Madoka happy. I feel very certain that Portable has been a blueprint for the series for a long time. We had Homalili and Rebellion continuing an idea from this game, what seems to be even more content from Portable showing up in this movie as well, and just the sheer effort and content inside of Portable that showed Shaft was really attached to this project. The game was fully voice acted by the main cast, and it even had Gen Urobuchi working as an assistant director for the series. It's been in my mind for some time, but now with pieces of evidence to actually back it up, I feel confident in saying that Walpurgisnacht Rising will be some kind of adaptation of Homura's route plus the best ending from Madoka Portable. It makes the most logical sense to me when considering the trajectory of Portable's content being adapted previously. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Walpurgisnacht Rising will absolutely not be a one-to-one adaptation of Portable. That would likely undermine the narrative established by Rebellion. But what I am saying is to take a look at the story presented in Portable to figure out what the trajectory of the next film will be. In my mind, that trajectory is for Homura to have another shot at fighting Walpurgisnacht with all of the quote-unquote correct knowledge to achieve the best outcome. So earlier in this video, I stated that I believed Homura views Paola and Quitterie as threats. My belief of this comes from another character exclusive to Portable called Eatsley. Eatsley is a witch whose magical goal is speculated, in universe, to have been an alien. Her design is, to me at the very least, reminiscent of Walpurgisnacht. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of information about Eatsley, but here are the most fascinating pieces of trivia that we do have. As stated prior, she is assumed to be an alien. Her nature is described as vengeful. Her minions are the same shadowy magical girl familiars used by Walpurgisnacht, and her presence implies an ability to erase magical girls from people's memory. Honestly, that last part is incredibly vague, as it is described in her biography. Her goal is to, quote, forget about all magical girls in this universe. That may be a mistranslation, but we will have to take it as presented. What we don't need to do guesswork for is the fact that Eatsley bears striking similarities to Walpurgisnacht, enough for me to believe that she is her world's version of the Ultimate Witch. That said, I won't suggest Eatsley will be in this film, but rather whatever plan may have been made for her in Portable will be translated and retrofitted to Walpurgisnacht's new lore. Another reason for this is that it is very likely we already know exactly who Eatsley's magical girl is, and myself and others agree that she is Mabayu from Scene Zero. Whether that means Mabayu herself is an alien is, well, an entirely different discussion. Let's break down a few simple observations. The first of the new trailers states that an oncoming calamitous phenomena is involving the cumulative collection of despair and a joining of witches. Homura names this phenomenon Walpurgisnacht. It implies that in this world, Walpurgisnacht does not yet exist in a way that it did in the original series, in that nobody is yet aware of it. Clearly, we are being told that a new version of the calamity known as Walpurgisnacht is the main overarching threat of the film. The question is, will this be the same Walpurgisnacht as the one we know? I've already spent too much time explaining the Ultimate Witch in depth at this point. You all know my belief by now that Walpurgisnacht is the witch form of the Law of Cycles due to how well it lines up with Madoka's conceptual form, but something I've grappled with is figuring out how that would fit into this film. Currently, I've landed on a satisfactory conclusion, which is that Walpurgisnacht will still be the Law of Cycles witch, and her magical girl is the mystery character who appears to have parts of each member of the Holy Quintet. I believe Walpurgisnacht will not be awakened instantly, but will of course be a slow burn build-up and a transformation completed by awakening several witches inside of this new world. These witches will include Candeloro, Ophelia, Quitterie, Paola, and potentially Octavia being thrown into the equation if Sayaka's tampering is a result of Kyubey rather than Homura. My general idea is that Kyubey will learn of the phenomena known as Walpurgisnacht and recruit magical girls in an attempt to remake it, possibly to awaken Madoka's dormant powers. Do we have any proof of this? I believe so. Mami Tomoe, as ever, is the linchpin in situations like this. Looking at her in the original series, she is so associated with the concept of justice and righteousness because she believes in Kyubey's stories and goals so much that it eventually leads to her downfall. In Magia Record, Mami's role is yet again as the poster child of believing in whatever system is fed to her, so long as it can align with her sense of justice. In this instance, she becomes a dangerously powerful puppet for the wings of Magius. In all of these trailers so far, several shots focus on a cake shop of some kind. Mami is the main character set in this location, but we have also seen Kyoko here too. Later on, in parts of the second trailer, Mami wears a costume which depicts a teddy bear. Right off the bat, assuming no other new character, I will go ahead and link this motif to Chitterie's magical girl. Chitterie's minions, while not known besides the ones which look like Kyubey, are handcrafted by the witch herself. It's reasonable to me to assume that her minions are stuffed toy animals like teddy bears. And as seen with Paola's magical girl, the minions are present even without them becoming witches. That is to say, while I think the temple and pond will be Paola's domain or labyrinth, then this cake shop will belong to Chitterie. The point of it will be indoctrination into whatever system she follows, targeting Mami and potentially Kyoko. Perhaps the more cake someone eats from this place, it makes them more susceptible to influence, maybe even from Chitterie herself. Mami wearing a costume based on a teddy bear might then represent the full circle of indoctrination. As an additional note, we can in fact confirm that the teddy bear aesthetic is something to do with Chitterie's magical girl. In the trailer from 6 months ago, a shot of her reveals her weapon, which looks like a traditional cutesy looking staff, which has a teddy bear on the end of it. The way witches appear to be handled in this film reminds me of Magia Record and Doppels, a system which forces what we might have called witches out of a magical girl for a brief period of time where they have full control, before returning to the body like normal. I imagine we will see an expansion of this in Walpurgisnacht Rising. So here is a quick restructure of what my theory for the plot is before moving on to some minor details. I now believe the general plot of the film is that Kyubey has contracted two unknown magical girls, Paola and Chitterie, whose goal is to indoctrinate Mami, Kyoko, and possibly Sayaka into joining them for what it has described as the ultimate salvation to save the universe from Homura's influence. Homura's identity is likely not known by Kyubey or the others, so instead, she is depicted as a vague threat. Kyubey's plan is based on knowledge it has gained either from Homura or as part of its multiversal hive mind memory, recreating a calamity so devastating that it forces the appearance of the Law of Cycles. This calamity is recognized as Walpurgisnacht by Homura, who uses her minions from Rebellion, the Claradolls, to make copies of herself to keep Madoka out of the incubator's grasp, while simultaneously grooming Sayaka into a weapon of her own to combat Walpurgisnacht. I don't feel entirely confident in trying to piece together a full outline of the theoretical plot. There's obviously going to be something involving Madoka meeting the new girls, potentially the inclusion of Eatsley, the wrap up of the story with the Law of Cycles, and whatever seems to be happening with Kyoko and Nagisa. All of these are details I don't have concrete answers for, but the theory above I feel is safe, sound, and plausible. Now, let's move on to small details and moments that I felt didn't need dedicated sections. The first thing I'm going to point out is a visual link between last year's trailer shot of Akuma Homura falling out of the sky and several shots in these two trailers. First, note the time of day in that original shot appears to be dusk. In the first of the new trailers, when we are shown direct looks at Paola and Quitterie, they transform midair falling from the sky. The color of the sky is not also implying dusk, but if you pay close attention to the clouds in the background in the actual video, they appear frozen just like the debris in the background of the shot of Akuma Homura falling. In the second of these trailers, we end on a lingering shot of Homura in her normal attire looking upwards with an angered expression as some black particles surround her, once more set at this time of day. My first belief is that these are linked. I believe these scenes stitched together would portray a battle between Paola and Chizuru versus Akuma Homura, one where Homura loses or is forced to retreat. If this is true, then it's kind of insane that these two new magical girls are physically capable of threatening Homura in direct combat. It implies a loss of power or a weakening of some kind. Next is this shot I mentioned in the trailer breakdowns. Mami and Nagisa are together, with the latter looking shocked or horrified at something in the distance. I pointed out that Kyoko appears to be lying face down on the ground next to Mami. So is Kyoko hurt, tired, dare I say it, deceased? Something drastic has happened to get the expression that Nagisa wears here, and whatever it was seemed to have affected Kyoko specifically. It's at night, which is when this movie's climax appears to be occurring, which also implies a very dangerous foe is across from this trio. Nagisa's role is undefined so far in this film, but she has a line in the most recent trailer that is similar to a line from the concept movie trailer, a line talking about how she can sense a conspiracy brewing. What that conspiracy was in the concept movie trailer was never quite clear, but here we can assume it has something specifically to do with the new magical girls. With a breather out of the way for recapping, let's get into the next major point I'd like to bring up. If you guys know anything about me, you would know that I am a nut for color theory, and its application to Madoka Magica is something that truly fascinates me. Not just what the colors mean to a character in a vacuum, but even how they contrast to certain other colors or characters. We are going to apply this to probably the most important theory regarding this film, which is the Clara Doll Homura theory. I don't ever do this, but I'm going to correct something I heard in a fellow Theory Crafters video about this movie. In 2024, Madoka Magica theorizer Clear and Sweet made a video discussing their 5 most interesting theories to listen to before the release of the next film. One of these theories spoke about the idea of the dummy Homura theory. The TLDR on this is that there are at least 2 versions of Homura, one being Akuma Homura and the other being a transformed Clara doll. I naturally agree with this theory. I'm not going to claim to take credit for this theory, but I touched upon it heavily in my last trailer breakdown, and my discussion there was not based on any pre-existing information I had heard. Anyway, in their video, Clear and Sweet makes a link between Homura carrying a parasol and the one dancing with Madoka, who has red eyes. I agree with this wholeheartedly. The headband between the two implies they are one and the same. However, they then continue to suggest that this Homura is also the same Homura who is looking into a mirror at herself. This is the shot with the shell mirror which reads Dume Venus. I'm just going to go ahead and call this out as untrue. Clearly, by looking at her eyes and headband, we can see that this mirror Homura and the dancing/red eyes Homura are not one and the same. I believe that there are three versions of Homura in this movie, being Akuma Homura and at least two other versions of her who are not Akuma Homura. The first is the Homura staring into the shell mirror. As described before, she is identified by purple eyes and a red ribbon not dissimilar from Homura at the end of the original series, though the ribbon here is much thicker than the ribbons that Homura wore, because they were Madoka's ribbons. There's also the Homura in the Victorian-era style dress who seems to have a resemblance to Walpurgisnacht. She has purple eyes and a black floral headband and a link to rotary phones. She was the version seen in the very first trailer for the film, and I believe she is the mirror Homura's magical girl form, or some kind of equivalent. On the second poster for the new movie, a Homura is in the foreground. I believe this to be Mirror Homura. First, note that her leggings are different than Prime Homura's, and also the ribbon in her hair matches the ribbon that we see in Mirror Homura's hair. This Homura has what is theorized to be a weapon of some kind that is in the shape of a rotary phone. This, at least, shows a link between her and the Homura who has the Victorian era style dress, and if this is Mirror Homura, then that confirms a link between those two as well. The second Homura is the one with very obvious red eyes, who dances with Madoka. Identified by the aforementioned red eyes, she also has purple hair and a headband reminiscent of a claridol. She is very obviously different to the other versions of Homura. She is also very clearly thematically linked to the Parasol Homura. Although Parasol Homura doesn't open her eyes, she has purple hair and the same headband, absolutely confirming a link between the two. I speculate that this is Red Eyes' magical girl form. Consistencies across designs are important to track down if we are to solve this puzzle. Clear, if you're somehow watching this, absolutely no shade, bro. That video is obviously now almost 2 years old, and I love your content when I get to go watch it. Guys, go give them a sub if you haven't already. Now, let's recalibrate. Purple is the main color motif of Homura Akemi. It is the color of her soul gem and the color associated with her magic powers. For a version of Homura to step away from the color purple means an obviously drastic shift. Color theory teaches us to look at purple not on its own, but as a combination of the traits of red and blue, to reach a symbolic meaning of structure and composure, or balance in another word. It's about merging the calm traits of blue with the passionate traits of red. Applying this to Homura, this is very clearly true. Homura is a composed individual whose passion secretly drives her goals to completion. She appears outwardly calm and in control while a fiery battle and fierce determination rages inside of her. It is quite literally a mix of the calm of blue and the passion of red. In my opinion, the two versions of Homura aside from Akuma will exemplify each of these two traits. The Homura who dances with Madoka has a very happy disposition and an outgoing personality. This is the same Homura who has red eyes, implying that the red symbolizes less restraint of Homura's passionate side. The Homura who looks into the mirror does so with a gentle, soft disposition, almost looking confused or contemplative. She is most definitely portrayed as more calm here, and if we believe the Homura in Victorian attire is her in her magical girl form, her demeanor there implies control. Both the eyes of Mirror Homura and the dress of Victorian Homura lean closer to the idea of blue than purple, at least in my way of viewing this, once more signifying their link and an overall link to the color blue. My final take on this theory is that Akuma Homura has two main claridols that she has transformed for the purposes of surveillance or distracting Madoka. The claridols were always extensions of Homura herself in rebellion, each represented a core facet of her emotions and identity, with the one that was missing being love, represented by Madoka. Following this logic, the two claridol Homuras represent extreme sides of her, red representing passion and blue representing composure or calmness. I believe both of them will have magical girl forms, as I pointed out, and might separate from Akuma Homura at some point, which might actually be why she could be weak enough to be damaged in a fight by Paola and Quitterie. Honestly though, what is going on with her? Ever since Rebellion's ending, we have known that some kind of connection exists between Sayaka and Akuma Homura. Whether servant and master, some kind of twisted romance, or any other such pairing situations, the point is Sayaka was always going to be important to the next chapter of the series. But the most recent trailer puts so much emphasis on her that it's hard not to notice. Nearly the entire trailer is about Sayaka's role in the new world, how weird it is to Kyoko that she's friends with non-magical girls, and Sayaka wanting answers to questions that she clearly has for Homura. Early on in my speculation, I suggested the idea of Sayaka becoming a weapon to kill Walpurgisnacht in Madoka's stead, a plan formed by Homura. My last trailer breakdown pieced together several scenes which I interpreted as being connected, speculating the existence of a scene that went as follows. It would depict Sayaka in a theater or auditorium being shown a history of old worlds by Homura, specifically showing her various tragedies and many different witches. After this show, something would react within Sayaka and reawaken Octavia. I last received a few comments questioning why Homura would undo turning Sayaka into a puppet with no memories of her former lives back into exactly what she was prior to this very movie. At the time, my answer was a flimsy and shallow idea that Homura is only awakening specific memories, but now something else has occurred to me. There appears to be a distinct difference between Magical Girl Sayaka and Schoolgirl Sayaka, and I don't simply mean aesthetically. Their demeanor is entirely different. You might be hearing this point and thinking immediately about how Sayaka has always been contradictory. In public social settings, she's outgoing but can easily crumble. Valid point and absolutely correct. However, I think this trailer has made the difference very drastic to a point where I'm asking a very bizarre question afterwards. Later in the trailer, we see that shot of Sayaka falling from the sky. She is in her magical girl form and looks emotionless, akin to her demeanor from when she was just about to succumb to despair in the original series. If you believe in dummy Homura theory, which seems all but confirmed at this point, then we agree that there is a clear separation of witch and magical girl happening to a larger degree in this film than we had seen prior. Think about it. Rebellion's version of Sayaka and Nagisa have the ability to summon the power of their witches. The idea of witch and magical girl separation has been hinted at and seemingly confirmed now with the dummy Homura theory. So, what if the distressed, emotionless husk of Sayaka isn't actually Sayaka herself, but rather Octavia masquerading as her after being separated from her magical girl? It mirrors what brought us here in the first place, Homura splitting Madoka from the Law of Cycles. In Magia Record, Rebellion, this film's trailer, each one of these pieces of Madoka Magica related media have had some kind of link to the idea of witches and magical girls being able to exist independently of each other, and I believe that this film will make this theme front and center. Rebellion's epilogue established the new world Akuma Homura created. It is identified by its half-cut imagery, notably the hill that overlooks the city and the moon are very obviously cut in half. In the first set of these recent trailers, we are shown a shot of this half moon, but as I pointed out in the trailer breakdown, it is not as simple as the moon being cut in half. The right side of the moon is actually seen fading from view, and I feel like that is a very deliberate distinction. As I first theorized way back in the day during, oh man, must have been 5 years ago now, I pointed out that the half moon was symbolic of Akuma Homura's contradictory nature, a being driven by love who hurts exactly who she loves, her dark and light sides coexisting. This implies that the half moon was always in this new world and was something Homura was subconsciously adding. But the fact that there exists a full moon that is fading into being a half-cut fixture instead implies that something is overriding Homura's grip. And while that tracks, right? The Rebellion epilogue already implies the existence of the Law of Cycles, so that alone tells us Homura really didn't have full control. This new imagery to me signals the idea that these new magical girls are such a massive disturbance that it's affecting Homer's world. And honestly, that lines up with what we've already speculated to be Paola and Quitterie's roles in this story. But it's not just the moon. Mitakihara Middle School is under construction, but if you note, only half of it is covered in this construction work paraphernalia. Only half is being overwritten. Maybe that'll remain as is, or maybe it's only half for now. The point is, there are new things happening in this world seemingly beyond Homer's control, and it's represented by something being taken over from the half side. And you know what? We can keep extending this. Homura split Madoka and the Law of Cycles, and it seems the latter is fading out of reality in some way while Madoka returns. Sayaka seems to have a clear distinction between her human and magical girl self, where one is fading into the background while the magical girl form, whether Sayaka or something puppeting her, takes control. We can't pinpoint the specifics of what this symbolism means, not yet, nor am I going to force an answer that I don't know. The point is this: half-cut imagery isn't simply that. The imagery is in reference to something being taken away or overwritten, and it is a very clear distinction. The movie will finally release this year in February. We are unsure of an English release date, but I am hoping to have a way to watch the film at time of release, so we'll see how that goes. This will most definitely be my last Madoka Magica video until the movie comes out, and a review will come for the film as soon as I am able to see it, which hopefully won't be too far off from my fellow content creators. Speaking of, I think it's time for some credits and special thanks. Cabot Purble, a founding member of the YouTube Madoka Magica community, recently came back into the content creating scene after a very long absence. I'd like to shout them out for their continued positivity, even if they might not always get a ton of attention on the algorithm. You have been a personal inspiration for me to make content to the best of my abilities. Specifically, thank you so much for continuing to keep the Madoka drama CDs archived. Clear and Sweet, fellow theorizer and content breakdown guru for not just Madoka Magica but other cool anime series as well. I don't want to assume, but I'd like to imagine we've come across each other's videos here and there and have been able to see differing takes and opinions and learn more from one another. A great creator and personal inspiration. Blick Winkle and MDK Gunner have videos going back as far as 13 years ago showcasing and archiving gameplay of Madoka Magica Portable. Thank you for your archival work of an incredibly important piece of media for the franchise. All the contributors of the Puella Magi Wiki for keeping us all up to date with important and relevant information. And of course, my viewers, subscribers, and commenters who make me want to continue with videos like this. I strive to try and improve each release, so I hope my content remains worth watching from here on out. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.